Hello again, Year 6, Miss Owen here for another topic session. We're on to lesson 5 now, and today what we're going to be looking at are hieroglyphics and the role of scribes. We sort of looked a little bit at scribes last lesson when we were talking about the Egyptian society and how certain people were above others depending on their job or what sort of family they were born into, and we're going to link that to hieroglyphics. Hopefully most of you will know that hieroglyphics are the form in which the Egyptians communicated with one another, and essentially their language, their way of writing things down. So if you want to go ahead and write in today's date and title, our learning powers for today are imitation, because we are going to be in some ways imitating the Egyptians by writing either messages or our names in hieroglyphics, and we're trying to make those links to what we've previously done about daily life, but also making those links to other achievements that the Egyptians have, or the ancient Egyptians were known for, such as that irrigation system we were looking at when we were looking at the Nile. Huge achievement for them. Hieroglyphics are a huge achievement for ancient Egyptians. Not many other civilizations were communicating as advancedly as they were. So the making links learning power is more about how we're linking all these achievements of the ancient Egyptians together. So bronze, you're going to be writing a message in hieroglyphics using the basic rules, and I'll be telling you what the rules are of hieroglyphics in a bit. Silver, you're going to write your name in hieroglyphics, so a bit of art in there, but you're also going to be thinking about what they were used for. Hieroglyphics had a purpose within ancient Egyptian society, and how important they are. Why did they even come up with this system? And gold, same as silver, really thinking about writing your name in hieroglyphics, but you're going to be looking at the use of the Rosetta Stone, which we're going to look at a little bit more, and what the role was of the scribes. I mean, we're all going to look at the role of the scribe anyway as we go through the slides, but you, as goals, you're going to be thinking about why were these particular jobs available to certain people. Okay, so a little bit of total recall. Let's start with one lesson ago. Who was higher on the social pyramid? Priests or scribes? Interesting one. Have a think. Who do you think came higher? Think about maybe what their jobs were. We looked at the society pyramid last lesson as well, so hopefully you should be able to remember. What equipment did the Egyptians use to get water from the canals into their fields? I'll give you a clue. Started with an S. And 3 lessons ago, how many years were there between the reign? Oh, that's not right. Sorry. Reign of King Tut, so King Tut, Tutankhamun, and Cleopatra. So how many years were there between those? So you can go ahead and pause the video now, have a go at this total recall. Okay, 1 lesson ago, who was higher on the social pyramid, priests or scribes? Well, it's actually priests. Scribes weren't far behind them, though. I think they were only on the next run down. Both very influential people within the Egyptian society, but priests were sort of leaders in their own right, because religion was so important to the ancient Egyptians, and because they were present at so many different kinds of rituals and events, they were sort of more important, I suppose. What equipment did the Egyptians use to get the water from the canals into their fields? It was known as the shadoof. It was kind of like that lever pulley system that we've seen on the last couple of lessons. And how many years were there between the reign of King Tut and Cleopatra? It's roughly, approximately 1,200 years, I believe, or 1,300 years in between those, that ballpark figure, between those 2 dynasties. We've talked about dynasties, haven't we? Passing of leadership on to the next generation. Okay, so hieroglyphics then. Have a little look at that first, and then we'll go into the role of the scribe. So hieroglyphics were first used by the Egyptians in approximately 3100 BC. So you're looking, you know, thousands of years ago they started communicating in this way. And they are considered one of the greatest achievements of the civilization, and were used as a way to communicate. And it was very technical and very high in advancement with how they did it. And they carved into stone, they wrote on papyrus, any way they could to communicate they would. Okay, but first let's discuss. Okay, we're going to sort of make a link here and sort of address maybe something that some of you might be questioning. So, do hieroglyphics remind you of anything? So, looking at them, do they remind you of anything that's more modern now that most of us probably use on a daily basis at some point? I know I do. I use them a lot in my communication with my friends. And that might give you a little tip. Oh, moved it up. That's clever. Okay, so some might say that hieroglyphics are almost kind of like our modern day emojis. Yeah, how they are used to sort of communicate a thought or an idea or even string a sentence together. So here I've got a couple of emoji sort of sentences, I suppose, or thoughts. I'm wondering whether or not you can work out what any of those actually sort of show us. So the first one is I love tea. Yeah, using the I as in the actual scientific I. Love tea. This one is 2 cookies, please. Again, another sort of thought or idea or sentence. This one is homeschooling is good. So we've got a little house and then a school and then the good emoji. Some of you might be thinking the opposite. And then you've got her favourite animal is a flamingo. And to those children, you will know that this is completely and utterly accurate when it comes to me. So the idea of using emojis to convey a thought or a sentence is very modern, obviously, for us now. But and I can see where the link can be made between hieroglyphics and emojis. And in some ways, they are very similar. In others, they're very different, though. So we're going to have a little look at this bit down the bottom now, where it says this, misconception alert. Whilst there are similarities between hieroglyphics and emojis, they are actually very different. Emojis represent a thought or a word, whereas each hieroglyphic represents a sound or a collection of letters that you have to group together to make a word. So when we're thinking about these hieroglyphics, you would need several of these put together to even formulate a word. Whereas when we think about emojis, one emoji can stand for a whole word or a thought. But hieroglyphics don't work in the same way. So even though they're both using sort of pictures to represent ideas, hieroglyphics are much more advanced in the sense that you would need many, many more to create even just one word, let alone a thought. All right, so I suppose emojis are more what we're thinking in our head. Hieroglyphics are how we would write it down in a word form. Okay, so there are links, but they're different as well. But I kind of just wanted to try and discuss emojis and hieroglyphics because there are lots of people that have, and lots of scientists and historians actually, not so much scientists, but historians have this debate all the time. Are emojis like our modern day hieroglyphics, and are we sort of going back to using images to represent what we want to say, like the Egyptians did? Is sort of history repeating itself in a sense? But anyway, I found that quite fascinating. Okay, so the Egyptian writing called hieroglyphics used pictures to represent different objects, actions, sounds, or ideas. There were more than 700 hieroglyphics. This is just a small selection that you see on the left-hand side, but there are actually over 700 of them. Some pictures stood for whole words, so that's where maybe you could make the link to emojis. The ancient Egyptians believed that it was important to record and communicate information about religion and government particularly. So this is why, this is now the importance of hieroglyphics and why they were used. They were used to record things for religion, for government, and essentially that's also why we can know so much about the ancient Egyptians. Without hieroglyphics and scribes to write these things down, we wouldn't know as much as we do about the ancient Egyptians. And hieroglyphics is made from 2 Greek words, which is quite handy actually, I suppose. The civilizations were quite closely linked in time, the Greeks and the Egyptians. Hieros means holy, and glyph meaning writing. So hieroglyph literally means holy writing, and they did consider it to be holy. It was very, very important to them to be able to write down what they wanted to say. Okay, which way do you read hieroglyphics? Quite important, I suppose. You need to closely look at hieroglyphics to find out. It depends on which way the people or animals are facing. So, for example, if an animal hieroglyphic faces to the right, you read from right to left. If it faces left, you need to read from left to right. So the same way we do, basically. Oh, and just to confuse you, sometimes they read hieroglyphics from top to bottom. So, however, how they manage to work it out is beyond me. But they essentially think of it as the way whatever the hieroglyph is facing, so the animal. If they're facing right, you read right to left. If they're facing left, you read left to right, essentially. Okay, and there's just a little image at the bottom there to help you work it out. Okay, so how do we actually decode what a message says? So if we're looking at that string of hieroglyphics there, what does it actually stand for? How do we work out what it's saying? And how have historians managed to work out how it's saying? Well, they use something called the Rosetta Stone. So the Rosetta Stone was discovered by some French soldiers when Napoleon was travelling through Africa. And it's the key to unlocking the ancient Egyptian language. It's like a code breaker. Okay. It was likely part of a temple that was destroyed by the Romans when the Romans took control of ancient Egypt. The Rosetta Stone is essentially a code breaker that has allowed historians to decipher many hieroglyphs that were left behind. And it was created in 196 BC. So almost towards the end of the ancient Egyptian civilization, really, they decided to sort of put together this code breaker that could be found by people like us in modern times to help us work out how they would try and talk, how they would communicate. And without it, historians wouldn't be able to read the hieroglyphics that they do now. There's a little YouTube link that's been sent out to you today as well to go along with this video, which is just of a historian showing you the actual Rosetta Stone and how people use it now to sort of decipher what hieroglyphics say. It's quite interesting. This here is sort of one of the images that's taken from the Rosetta Stone. How on earth they use it to work out what hieroglyphics mean, we do not know. But still very interesting, and you can see how many hieroglyphs there were. I mean, when we looked earlier on, there was over 700, so masses and masses of hieroglyphics. Right then, so who would write hieroglyphics? So scribes. We're going on to the scribes now. Those important people within the society of ancient Egypt, and they were high on the social calendar. Sorry, it's high on the social pyramid, I should say. And they were highly regarded, sorry, I should say, amongst the wealthy. So some families would even have their own scribe that they employed to keep track of their taxes, to keep track of their animals on their farms, keep track of their crops, write what was going on with their family, because ancient Egyptians wanted to record what was going on in their lives for people to find and for people to know about. They were skilled and had to dedicate, sorry, my spelling on this slide is not very good, had to dedicate a great deal of time to their craft. They had to go to school to learn how to write in hieroglyphics, and they were very, very important people, and they did some very important jobs around ancient Egypt. So we're going to have a little look at some of their jobs now. So scribes wrote in many different places and for many different reasons. They wrote spells on tomb walls for those that were going to the afterlife. They wrote instructions for rituals in temples. They worked very closely with priests. They wrote down government records, again working very closely with the pharaohs and the viziers, the advisors to the pharaoh. They communicated with each other during battles by writing. So if there was a battle going on, scribes would take messages from, say, one general to another, and they would use hieroglyphs to write down what the generals wanted to say. They kept count of livestock and crops in the field, so they monitored how much food there was going to be for the people. So for all these reasons and more, they were considered one of the most important groups of people in Egypt. Essentially, without the scribes, hieroglyphics wouldn't exist because you wouldn't have that group of people to create to write them down where people wanted them to be. So very important jobs that they had. And this is just a story of an ancient Egyptian text, actually, that was found during an excavation, and it's known as the teaching of Dwefi's son Keti. And it's a father is taking his son to scribe school, where the boy will learn how to read and write. The father is telling his son why being a scribe is the best profession in the world. So he's sort of trying to convince his son that actually being a scribe is the best thing that he could possibly do. I will make you love writing more than your mother. I will show you its beauties to you. Now it is greater than any trade. There is not one like it in the land. I have seen the metal worker working at the mouth of his furnace, with his fingers like stuff of a crocodile. He stinks more than fish eggs. The carpenter who uses a dies, which is a form of tool, he is more tired than a worker in the fields. His field is the wood, his hoe is the dies. His work is endless. The jeweler drills with his chisel in different kinds of stone. Once he is done with the inlay of his eyes, his arms are weary, he is tired, sitting down at sunset. His knees and back ache. Look, no trade is free from director, except the scribes. He is the director. But if you know writings, it better for you. More than these trades I have shown you. So the father is actually being quite negative about the other trades that are available during ancient Egypt. And I don't think he means to be so negative about them, but he just wants to sort of show to his son that actually being a scribe puts you really high in society, gives you a good standard of life. And essentially, you're your own boss. This is what he's talking about when it comes to the director. You're your own boss. You work for yourself. You work for the pharaoh and the priest, but you dictate to what you do on a daily basis. So it's a really, really high up end kind of job. Okay, so this brings me on to your activities now. So bronze, like I said earlier, you're going to write a message in hieroglyphics using the basic rules. Whilst doing this, consider what it might have been like to be a scribe during the ancient Egyptian times. I mean, when we look at the hieroglyphics in a moment, they were very detailed. They had to be good and skilled at what they were doing, and it would have taken a long time. So just consider what it would have been like to be a scribe, and maybe write that after you've done your message. Silver, you're going to write your name in hieroglyphics, state why they were used and why they were important. And then gold, same as silver, stating your name, writing your name, but you need to state the importance of hieroglyphics, the use of the Rosetta Stone, and the use of the scribe, or the role of the scribe within ancient Egyptian times. Okay, so I'm just going to show you a picture now of how it sort of should be set out in your books. Okay, so excuse the lines, the indentation on my page that's left over from my when I was drawing some of the timelines out for a previous lesson. So I've done the date, the title at the top. So bronze, I put that you could write your name or a little message. Okay, so that's sort of what you're doing, and then maybe underneath tell me what it would have been, what you think it would have been like to be a scribe. And then silver, you're sort of writing, you're writing your name, but also including why were hieroglyphics used and why are they important. So those are your sort of strands of questions. And then gold, you're doing what this bit that you're doing your name, what hieroglyphics were used for. Then you're also adding a bit about the Rosetta Stone. And then you're writing a bit about the scribe and their role within the ancient Egyptian society. Okay, so I hope you all managed to do that okay. I'll be on duty when this session is going on, so if you need any help, please let me know. And don't forget to send pictures to your teachers to help, also then to see what you're getting up to. I'll just show Bronze the hieroglyphics now then. There you go. That's your hieroglyphics that you can use. Oh, bring it right down and go to full screen for you. There you go. Okay. Hope you've enjoyed this session, and I'll see you again for another one shortly.